Alright, I've seen both the videos from both sides involving Lyle Convoy and Senate, as well as the stuff that's going on with Cass. And I'm just gonna say this objectively. Lio is in the wrong. Like what Lio tried to do involving that 15, 16-year-old girl when it came down to trying to get her to film her own assault in an attempt to nail her offender to the wall was grossly irresponsible, criminal, potentially, if things had gone the way that they thought it could have gone. And not only that, but it would be more or less like a passive complicity with the fact that this individual was aware that this attack was going on whilst the attack was being filmed, and at the same time, one of the people in question was actually a predator himself, who was also on board with attempting to catch the assault on film, probably for his own meat-beating purposes. Like, I don't even care if I offend anyone in that situation, because genuinely no one in that situation comes out good. Like, and the worst part is, like, I understand wanting to catch someone that you believe is doing this. I understand wanting to be able to nail this person to the fucking wall so they can't hurt this person or anyone else ever again. I get it. But there are certain times where the ends just don't justify the means. There is literally no situation at all that you could ever make up where that sounds like any bit of a good idea. Because let's be honest, even if you don't intend to have done that, in the sense that you don't mean to use it for the purposes that it is, the person is still more or less creating an illicit material involving a minor. So it does not matter whether or not the intention was the same as the final product would have been. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, like, what would have happened if the person did actually assault the victim, became aware that the victim was filming it, and decided to take things a step further than they already did? Like, was the victim's safety really worth gambling on? I'm not saying I could have thought of a better plan. Well, actually, I think anyone could have. I think Wile E. Coyote could have thought of a better plan. And this motherfucker has made almost a century out of fucking up every single plan he's ever attempted, because he always chooses the same shitty company with the same poor tools and the same bad design. But the fact is, what Lio tried to do could have actually resulted in far worse things happening to the victim if the person that was assaulting them had uncovered the fact that they were being filmed in that given instant. Lio's entire idea was flawed from the very get-go. Even if you discount the fact that there's actually someone that was proven to be a predator inside that particular VC also organizing that little plan. As I've said before, this person probably had their own reasons for wanting it to be filmed. I do not believe even for a fucking minute that the person that was exposed as a predator, I believe it was Vito or whatever the fuck his name is, like, I do not believe for a minute this person had altruistic intent behind wanting evidence like that. I believed he just wanted it for his own personal purposes. He would have gotten it from the victim, most likely by trying to convince the victim that he'd submit it to the police as an anonymous tip in hope of getting the people to stop by the house and investigate the home. Meanwhile, nothing would be done of that sort. Lio might press him as to why the fuck it is that he might not have contacted the police if that situation were to have gone down like that. But I don't really know if Lio would press him sufficiently to the point to where he would actually either hand it over in hopes of getting the police involved, or he'd just do the right thing and basically just dip and just stay away from everyone, because he basically would have fucked himself there, given the fact that the dude would have had that material and people would have started questioning why it was there if it wasn't being sent to the proper authorities as a means to detain the motherfucker responsible. Like, the fact is, Lio's plan was asinine. And it will always be asinine. It was basically like what would happen if T-Cap, instead of using instead of using actors or decoys, it was basically what would happen if there was actually a real underage girl there, and Chris Hansen decided to show up only after the person had finished raping or molesting the girl, just to say, "Oh, by the way, we got it all on film. We didn't stop you when it was going on or involve the police in any way up till this happened. But remember, we're here to catch you, and you've been caught." Yeah, like you caught them, but at what cost? Like I said, do the ends really justify the means if the person needs to suffer even more before you can actually say that they're caught? Because realistically, even if you do catch the person in that particular situation, a lot more questions will spring up about the ethics of what you're doing, about whether or not it's considered justified. And I don't mean getting the motherfucker caught, I mean just the fact that you were trying to get someone to film their assault. I mean, think about it. Like, a victim is self-conscious enough as it is, trying to come forward with their story to people that they know. Now, imagine, for example, if you have potentially dozens of strangers in there seeing the assault take place, and even if the assault did go down and they reported it to the police, and the police arrived during the assault, that doesn't change the fact that during the assault, the victim is being witnessed undergoing this whole thing, whilst the people there are observing it. And even if they did get away from, even if the recording was not shown to them, and they somehow knew it, that wouldn't change the fact the person still suffered a tremendously traumatic event, just for the sake of being able to put that guy away. And here's the thing, putting him away, okay, fair enough, get that. But the problem is when you start needing to sacrifice someone else's innocence and damage them in a way that they might not be able to recover from, just to say that you caught one motherfucker, you're still coming up zero. It's like 0, 1. Like, you're subtracting from a 1. You end up with nothing. You're not in the negatives, you're not in the positives. You basically just lose whatever you would have gained, because the methods you employed are just as fucked up as what this person was doing to them, if not worse. Well, actually, yeah, what the victim would have went through would be worse from the person that did it to them. I'm not going to deny that, but the fact is, it's almost as bad, because you're more or less allowing an avenue where people could potentially view this, which in turn would add to that insecurity, the anxiety, the insecurity, the fear they might feel that no one will believe them. They might be more hesitant to come forward if they feel like they might be judged for in some way. And even if Lio I don't believe that Lio personally would necessarily judge a victim. I don't. I don't really know enough about Lio to say whether he would or not, but I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wouldn't. The fact is, though, whether or not he judges the victim would be irrelevant, considering the fact that other people would have seen it, or potentially seen it, that are not law enforcement, that would not have the proper methods to use that and collect that for data, connect that information for evidence collection in hopes of locking the motherfucker up. It would have just been more compounded trauma that the victim would have had to go through. And the worst part is the people responsible for trying to organize that little, I guess you could say, that shit attempt at a sting. They were pretty much ready to mentally condition this person to believe that they could just run to whoever the fuck might be able to help them. But the fact is, by doing so, you're essentially convincing this person that's probably already mentally fucked up that they should allow themselves to be filmed when undergoing this particular trauma. And again, I understand the intention behind it, but I cannot get behind the action itself, because the action itself is overwhelmingly negligent and could have caused more harm than good. It's like, yeah, we got him caught, yeah, and all it took was for the person to get raped on camera. I imagine you must be real proud of yourself knowing you caught him, but what happens to the victim now? What's going to happen to them now? They're still going to have to live with the memories of what this person just fucking did to them. And they're probably going to feel even fucking worse, knowing the fact that people saw them go through it at some point. I mean, at least if it's law enforcement, the person could get some solace in the fact that these are people who are trying to help them, who understand that what's happening to them is not their choice, and that they were more or less forced into it by using violence or intimidation and coercion in some way. Whereas if it's just a bunch of random people on the internet, especially especially the dude that was later found out to be a predator, it doesn't sound like there was any real sincerity in the attempt to get that guy caught. Now, the intention might have genuinely have been to get him caught. I don't know. But the fact is, when you use methods like that, it doesn't really sound like it was a matter of altruism. It sounded like it's more of a, I'm going to pat myself on the back for having caught this motherfucker. But at the same time, it's not really worth patting yourself on the back if you have to do it with a hand that's essentially coated in blood because someone else has essentially just lost their innocence in more ways than one, just for you to be able to document the fact that it happened and get the guy arrested. Like, I understand from the call that the mother was not listening to her, but you could have easily just filed an anonymous tip to the police. Like, I understand, one or two might not have worked, but if you guys hound that police department in that town non-fucking stop to the point to where they are forced to look into it, probably could have turned out better. I mean, it would have. It probably could have done a whole lot better job of trying to get someone investigating that situation to see whether or not abuse had occurred. Instead of doing that asinine fucking idea of saying, hey, put a camera up and see if your stepfather rapes you. And then send us the footage. And then we're going to send it to the cops. It's like, okay, well, I understand what you were trying to do again, but that doesn't remove the fact that you essentially have CP at that point. And even if you don't have it for the reasons that, literal degenerates do, that doesn't change the fact that you more or less had someone produce it in that sense, and then send it to you just so you could then hand it off to law enforcement. I mean, I understand that someone believes they're doing the right thing, but there are certain measures that you just should not take. And that is like one of the big fucking no-nos of that whole situation. I mean, the whole situation is just Lio making a massive fucking boo-boo and not seemingly understanding the fact that, yeah, what you did could have fucked this person up worse. Not only that, but if this person was caught trying to film their assault, odds are, like I said, the person assaulting them could have turned violent. Like, what happens if this person, I'm just gonna give a quick what if. Like, what would have happened if the person did assault them that night, discovered that they were filming them with their phone, because they realized that the light or something was on. Because if the lights are off, this person might have turned the flashlight on to offer better visibility, so they might be able to identify this person by their face if the flashlight on the phone is on. Like, what happens if the person, for whatever reason, discovers they're being filmed assaulting this person, and they decide that the only way to cover it up is to beat this person to death, or to strangle them, or to do something worse to them that will make them completely hesitant to contact anyone about getting help and getting away from the abuse ever again? Like, what would have happened then? Like, would that have been a good risk to take? Is that you could risk this person getting potentially killed by their would-be abuser. Because it seems like there were a lot of steps that were skipped when it came down to planning. And those steps that were skipped seem to be pretty big fucking steps. Like, okay, well, what are you going to do if this happens? Like, there apparently was no real contingency plan. And I understand that they might have been working with, like, bare bones. Like, they might have thought they had literally no other option. They might have had no clue whatsoever, like, what other options might have been available. It might have been, like, a Hail Mary attempt to get this person out of what they believed was an abusive situation that could have resulted in things that were unspeakable. But all of that reasoning flies right the fuck out the window when you realize that the same reasoning they tried to use could have also been used to cause more harm than good. Like, I'm just gonna say it. I genuinely think that the whole thing was basically just a way for Lio to pat himself on the back and act like he had done some good in the world by catching someone, by essentially offering that person's minor stepdaughter essentially like a cam girl for them, except they would not know the kid's being filmed by themselves. But I'm just saying, that was a pretty big fuck up, Lio.